It was a nice body, slender, not as flexible as you might have hoped, fun for a few hours, but nothing you would want to keep or hold on to. The bodies of young men are like furniture from IKEA. Clean lines, smooth surfaces, but no real promise of longevity or staying power, and mine was no different, and I knew that, which is why I wanted the bodies of older men, their skin mapping out the place I would go, their touch, the promise of living into that country of age that seemed so far away that I thought I might never get there. One man would tell me nothing, except to confirm that he was older than my father. And this was on the subway the morning after we had laid down on his bed under a painting of him that had been done when he was still a model decades ago. He liked my body because it reminded him of the one he had lost. It comforted him too, because his had been so much prettier. If you died, I'd tattoo your name on my forearm in 14-point font, Times New Roman, starting at the crook of my elbow and taking up exactly 2 inches. I've measured. It's a stupid thing to think, what would I do if you died? You can't prepare for death, but I can love the sight of my empty arm. My husband is contemplating a tramp stamp tattoo, and if you want to talk to me about it afterwards, his getting it is contingent on my approval. Vocabulary. I used to love words but not looking them up. Now I love both, the knowing and the looking up. The absurdity of discovering that boreal has been meaning northern all this time, or that estrus is a much better word for the times when I would most likely have said in heat. When I was translating, the dictionary was my enemy, the repository of knowledge that I seemed incapable of retaining. The foreign word for inflatable simply would not stay in my head, though the English word deictic, after just one encounter, has stuck with me for a year. I once lost desiccated for a decade, first encountered in an unkind portrayal of Ronald Reagan, and then finally returned to me in an article about cheese. I fell in love with my husband not when he told me what the word aperçu means, but when I looked it up, and he was right. There's even a word for when you use a word not to mean its meaning, but as a word itself, and I would tell you what it was if I could remember it. My friend reads the dictionary for its perspective on culture, laughs when I say that reference books are not really books, but proleptic databases. My 3rd grade teacher used to joke that if we were bored, we could copy pages out of the dictionary, but when I did, also as a joke, she was horrified rather than amused. Discovery is always tinged with sorrow, the knowledge that you have been living without something. So we try to make learning the province of the young, who have less time to regret having lived in ignorance. My students are lost in dictionaries, unable to figure out why categorize means to put into categories, or why the 5th definition of standard is the one that will make this sentence make sense. I wonder how anyone can live without knowing the word wonder. A famous author once said in an interview that he ended his novel with an obscure word he was sure his reader would not know because he liked the idea of the reader looking it up. He wanted the reader, upon closing his book, to open another, that 2nd book being a dictionary, and however much I may have loved that author, after reading that story, and this may surprise you, I loved him less. So the heart of this book is these sort of unreadable pieces in which I do these kind of 20th century fluxus operations on poems, or fluxus, dada, ulipo, kind of like using all of this tradition. And so in an effort to make things readable, I've been sort of forcing myself to try them out. So you can tell me what you think afterwards. So this is a poem called Anachronistic Fair Use Self-Portraits of 20th Century Sylvia Plath with Daddy Fixation. And so you guys know the first stanza of Daddy, you do not do any more black shoe, which I have lived in poor and white like a foot, barely daring to breathe or a chew. So these are various things done to that. 1, self-portrait of Sylvia Plath as Raymond Roussel. Voodoo pot glue, fennel ore slack screw, sandwich spy salve, sieved spike of foot, forth shirty spears, bore and slight, warily scaring to free Pikachu. Self-portrait of Sylvia Plath as Raymond Queneau. N+7, which is an operation where you look up a word and then you replace it with the seventh definition after it in the dictionary. So N+7 for verbs, nouns, and adjectives. You daub not daub, any more bledish shoku, which I have lixiviated like a foozle, for thirstly yellowfish, popcorn and whizgig, barely darkling to breach or chromatize. This is the self-portrait of Sylvia Plath as F.T. Marinetti. So you do not do any more black show! In which I have lived like a foot for 30 years pouring white, barely daring to breathe or a chew! I think is what it sounds like. I'm not sure. Self-portrait of Sylvia Plath as Wittgenstein. So it's written in that Socratic, Aristotelian. So 1, there is a daddy. 1.1, the daddy is the case. 1.2, the daddy does not do. 1.3, the daddy does not do. 1.4, the daddy does not do anymore. 1.5, the daddy is like a shoe. 2, there is a daughter. 2.1, she lives in the shoe-like father. 2.1.2, the daughter is foot-like. 2.2, the daughter is poor. 2.3, the daughter is white. 2.4, the daughter has foot-like lived in the father's shoe-like for 30 years. 2.5, she barely dares to breathe. 2.6, she barely dares to achoo. I will not, I have less, so Tristan Sara is the, he would actually read these whole things, which Tao Lin does apparently. Like Tao Lin apparently reads the entirety of that, like, And Then We Ate Whale poem. He actually reads that like 130 times. I like you, so I won't do that to you. But it just says daddy about 200 times. And then who still considers himself very likable, Sylvia Plath. Okay. All right. Some of these are participatory. I don't know how adventurous you feel. Do you feel participatory? All right. So, so there are 10 poems for Fluxus, and if you know Fluxus, I have a lot of issues with art movements that tell you to do something and then call it their art. Like when Yoko Ono's like, think of a cloud, that's art. And I'm like, no, like do something that you put on the wall. Like that's art. Like I can think of clouds on my own. Like I don't need you for that. So anyway, we'll try a few of these. So if everyone would stand up for a second, could you stand up?